Where they play the right music, getting in the swing, you come to look for a king. Anybody could be that guy, night is young and the music's high. With a bit of rock music, everything's fine, you're in the mood for a dance. And when you get the chance, you are the dancing queen, young and sweet, only 17. Dancing queen, feel the beat from the tambourine. You can dance, you can jive, having the time of your life. Ooh, see that girl, watch that scene, digging the dancing queen. You're a teasy to turn him on, leave him burning and then you're gone. Looking out for another, anyone will do, you're in the mood for a dance. And when you get the chance, you are the dancing queen, young and sweet, only 17. Dancing queen, feel the beat from the tambourine. You can dance, you can jive, having the time of your life. Ooh, see that girl, watch that scene, digging the dancing queen. Digging the dancing queen.
All right. All right. Thank you, Nicole, for the great music. Good evening, morning, afternoon, everyone, kind of depending on where you are, middle of the night. We are excited to welcome you from Durham. My name is Jordan Hale. I have the privilege of serving as the Director of New Student Orientation. We have two tremendous guests here with us, one who is our special guest. We'll first let our guests with their devil's horns introduce themselves, and then we'll turn it over to David to introduce himself. And then we will do a quick introduction and jump into your questions. So Nicole, take it away.
Awesome. So I'm Nicole Pontecorvo. I'm the Assistant Director of New Student Programs, and I thought I'd set the mood tonight with my fun little devil horns. Welcome.
All right, David.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is David Rabiner. I'm the director of the Academic Advising Center. Our office oversees advising for all the Trinity College students like you from right now, really, until up until you declare your major at some point as a sophomore. I'm also one of the academic deans in Trinity, and I'm a psychology professor.
Great. Great. Well, thank you, David. Well, David, what we thought we would do tonight, and thank you all for jumping on. We have right now 192 of you. We typically have about 1,500 students that participate in Trinity College. So we're over 10% of incoming first-year Trinity students that are participating, which is absolutely tremendous, particularly with the late notice of this. So thank y'all so much for jumping on. And it means that we're going to have a lot of questions, David. What I think we'll do to kind of get started, David, as the questions are coming in, is maybe you can just give an overview of the philosophy and approach with book bagging. And then if you can kind of give that description, we'll start to get some of the questions ready and then ask you those questions. And for those who are attending, please continue to put your questions in the Q&A section. If you send it in the chat, we might actually miss it. So if you can click on that Q&A box and send it there, that'd be awesome. So David, if you can get started, we will then jump into the questions after that.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about book bagging and just a general, some general guidelines for choosing your classes. First off, I'd really encourage all of you, if you haven't already done it, to go back and review the Learning at Duke section and the registration section of the Blue Book. That will answer a lot of questions that you have and help you feel, I think, more up to date with what's coming up for you. In terms of book bagging, that's really a chance to kind of go through the schedule, which is now finally online, and just see all the different courses that might interest you. As you'll see, there's over 1,500 courses that are offered. You'll find, in all likelihood, dozens that look like they'd be great to take. We don't recommend putting dozens into your book bag, but it's really a good idea to put 7 or 8 in there. You can only register for 4 full credit classes in your first semester, but it's good to have backups, because it's likely that it wouldn't be surprising if certainly one of the classes that you wanted to take wound up filling. Something that's so different this year from any other year, one of the many things, is that, if you were registering or you were book bagging in mid-July, which is when it typically, actually, no, that's back in mid-June, you would have registered in mid-July. When you started book bagging, because all the returning students have already registered, when you looked at the schedule, you would have a pretty good idea about how many seats were available in classes you were interested in. This year, if you start to look at the schedule today to book bag, it looks like every single seat is free in every single class. And that's because the returning students, the seniors, juniors, sophomores, they haven't enrolled yet. They enrolled back in the spring, that got wiped out. They've got to start over again. And so as they start to register, keep an eye on what's in your book bag, and you'll see things start to fill up. Some classes may be full before you get to register. That's why it's good to have backups in there. And the reason to keep them all in your book bag is then you just have to go to one place to see what's happening with the classes that you're interested in terms of how many seats still look like may be there. Just in terms of some quick guidelines for choosing your classes, remember to check if you're supposed to take Writing 101. If you're scheduled to take Writing 101 this fall, half of the class was chosen at random to do that. You've got to enroll in it, period. There aren't any alternatives to that. You'll need to find the Writing 101 section to take. It's a really good idea to have 2 or 3 of those in your book bag, because those are limited to 12 students. They often fill, and you want to have a backup for that. If you're not in Writing 101, be sure to try to get yourself in a seminar. There's a great series of first-year seminars that are just for your class. Faculty who volunteer to teach first-year seminars are typically super interested in engaging with first-year students, which just makes it a great option. But you can also take any seminar class that you have the background for that interests you. It doesn't have to be a first year. For your other classes, what I'd say is, don't worry about getting requirements done. Any class that you take in your first semester is going to satisfy multiple curriculum requirements. That's almost always the case. You don't have to worry about getting started on a major. There's not one single major in Trinity College that if you don't begin it in your first semester, you can no longer complete it. That just won't happen. Most students have, a field, a discipline or two that they start out with a strong interest in. If that's the case, right? Although you don't have to worry about starting on a major, it makes great sense to take a class in a department that you have a strong interest in coming into Duke, to begin seeing what that discipline is like here at Duke. And then I'd also encourage you to think about, there's so many departments that I've never had a chance to take anything in because they're just not part of what my high school does. Look for a new department, a new area that looks, I've never done anything here, but that looks like it could be super interesting. And you can think about one of your classes as really just a kind of a more pure exploration class. And a lot of times students who take a class for that reason. Gee, I've never taken a religion class or documentary studies class, but that looks kind of neat. Oftentimes students really discover a new interest that they wind up pursuing. So I'll stop there, and then Jordan, we can just start with questions, and I'll do my best.
Perfect. Thank you, David. And we have plenty to get to, so this is tremendous. So thank you all for submitting questions. So the first one I'll just kind of touch on, David, and we're just going to go through these as they were submitted. So thank you all for your patience as we get to your questions. So the first one talks about first-year seminar classes and says that that many of the first-year seminars are Ethics 189 classes, have that as a core requisite. But they're unable to register without instructor approval. Is Ethics 189 a focus style class, or like why would students be unable to register for that particular seminar?
For Ethics 189,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so this is gonna take me a sec because I'm gonna have to go into DoCub and look at that. One thing that this points out that you will find is, because Duke offers so many classes, there's literally no way that anybody, no matter how long they've been here, can be sort of well-versed in more than a small number. And so what I'm gonna do is what your advisors will need to do, and just try to look that up and see what may be going on with it. So the 89 S classes are, so I don't, so the first one I looked at, I don't see anything that would keep any student from enrolling in that. The only prereq that's listed is, because it's a first year seminar, you have to be a first year student. So I don't see anything that would prevent, co-requisite, okay, let's see. Co-requisite Ethics 189. I'm gonna have to
Sure.
tomorrow, Jordan, I'll have to look into that with the registrar,
Okay.
and I'll send you the answer, and then you can email back to the student. I honestly have no idea. I have not seen that before.
Okay. Thank you, David. Yeah, we'll be sure to get the answer and post it on social media tomorrow. So for that one, so I'm taking a note of that now. The next question is, how many 100, 200, and 300 courses do freshmen commonly take?
How many 100, 200, and 300 level courses do students commonly take?
Mhm.
You can only, in your first semester, you can only enroll in 4.5 credits. So that's 4 full credit academic classes. If you want to take 1.5 credit class, like a PE class, some of the dance classes, you can do that. With your dean's permission, your dean may bump your enrollment up to 5 credits if you ask for it, but that would still only be 4 full credit classes and 1 half credit, 2 half credit classes.
Okay. Thank you.
In terms of the 100, 200, 300, anything at the 100 level is going to be appropriate for first year students unless there are particular prerequisites that you may not have. So for example, some of the math courses like Math 122, you need first year calculus before you can take second year calculus. Generally, anything in the 200 level is also fine for first year students. Again, unless there are required prereqs that you don't have, there shouldn't be anything that should prevent you from feeling like you'd be ready for a 200 level class. A 300 level class, basically that just means that you're more likely to be in there with, with sophomores, juniors, and maybe some seniors, but it's not uncommon for a student in their first year to take a 300 level class. Sometimes they take 400 level classes. Again, if there aren't any prereqs, it means Duke Hub will let you in. And if you have questions about, gee, is this a smart thing for me to do? Will I be prepared to take this class? The best thing is to email the instructor and say, hey, I'm a first semester student. I've looked at your class on Duke Hub. It looks really interesting. I'm a little concerned because I'm only in my first semester. What do you think about whether this would be a reasonable class for me to take? And the instructor is the best source of information on that.
Thank you, David. The next one
Oh,
is,
by the way, Jordan,
Yeah.
I did figure out the answer to that first question.
okay,
You know, there's a series of seminars, first year seminars this year that are part of this called the What Now series.
mhm,
And those are classes that are specifically focused on really kind of looking at kind of big picture kinds of questions, really like, you know, basically what I want to do with my life, what's important to me, why is it important, what kind of life do I want to build for myself, what really matters to me and why does it matter. Those seminars that are part of that series have a half credit common experience that's required when you enroll in one of those What Now series. You'll be prompted to enroll in that half credit sort of What Now common experience. That's the 189, and it's a required part of being in that class. So that's what it's about. So you enroll in the 89S one that you want to take, and then you'll be prompted to enroll in that half credit component.
okay. Okay, thank you, David. That's perfect. Next question we have is, approximately how many courses do you recommend students put in their book bag beyond their required 4? So,
Yeah, I would say I would plan on 8 or so.
okay,
And so, you know, and what you want to be doing, right? So let's say you register on the first day. So for first year students, that's on the 11th. So, you know, if you check the evening of August 10th, that when the sophomores are done, you go look in your book bag and you'll be able to see of the classes that you want to take, what is the available seats look like. You know, you can't enroll in all 8, but you'll want to put checks next to the 4 that you want to take. And come 7 o'clock the next morning, you want to be ready to just hit complete my enrollment, that complete my enrollment button on Duke Hub. That's what actually moves you into your courses. But you know, I would certainly plan on having 7 or 8 in there. And if it turns out as you're watching that more things are filling, then you may have to put another class or 2 in there. And just so you all know, basically the way that it works is, you know, even if there are 3 seats that look like they're available on the evening of the 10th, and you register the next morning and there are 3 seats, so you think you're good for it, you probably will be good, but there might be 5 students who are registering with you on the 11th who've got that same class in their book bag, right? And then it's just a matter of whose request gets to the registrar's registration server first. It's kind of first come, first served, and if somebody else's request shows up like a millionth of a second earlier, that seat may be gone. So having backups is always a really good idea.
right, thank you, David. It says that the location of the class is TVA. Does that mean it's going to be in person? I don't know if we
Yes.
can put the information right now.
If it says room TBA, that means room to be assigned, and that will be an in-person class. And if you actually click on the link for that class in the instruction, you know, the box that comes up, there'll be a line that says instruction mode, and it should indicate in person. Anything with a room to be assigned at the moment is planned to be an in-person class.
Got it. This is another one. It says, will professors have office hours even if they are teaching online? I believe the answer to that is yes, right? They will still have virtual office hours?
They will have virtual office hours, correct? Yep.
Good, good. Wanted to make sure about that. It says, will we have to book bag multiple schedules if we find one schedule that is filled when we register? So what are your thoughts about people kind of having multiple plans ready? I feel like you kind of answered this, like it's worth having a variety of classes set aside just in case 1 or 2 classes don't work.
Yeah, well, you know what will happen when you check off the 4 and then you hit complete my enrollment, you will find out almost right away whether you were successfully enrolled in all your classes. It may take a little while for the page to load because so many people are doing it essentially at the same time, but the page that comes up will indicate which classes you were enrolled in, and hopefully it's all 4. And it will also indicate if, say, one of your classes didn't work out. That's when you want to go back into your book bag, check the next course on your list, your next top choice, and then you'll try to finish your enrollment with that class.
Thank you, David. It says, could you explain what a combined session class? What is a combined session class? Do you know what that is, David?
Yeah, I'm not, I think, I'm not sure I'm not familiar with that term. If you're referring to a kind of a hybrid class, those are classes where under the instruction mode, it lists both online and in person. So perhaps that's what you were referring to. If that student were to email the course number that they're looking at, I can take a look at it and get back to them. But off the top of my head, that doesn't ring any bells.
Got you. David, do you know when the locations or rooms for classes will be released?
I do not.
Yeah.
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 Before classes begin, I felt confident about that, but I do not know when those room assignments will be made. There's a lot of them now that are listed as TBA.
Okay. Okay. This one says, what if you do have classes at conflicting times and you cannot move one of the classes, for instance, because you're in a focus course? I think for that, you would just have to, select a different course, right?
Yeah, there are no exceptions. The registrar, the system will not let you enroll in classes where there's a time conflict, where the time for one class overlaps in any way with the time for the other. It's just not possible. So you would have to drop, give up on one of those classes. And if it's a focus class, you can't withdraw from a focus class directly. You would have to go through focus, but enrolling in classes that have a time overlap is not possible.
Okay. Dave, we have a specific question about music ensembles. So to kind of switch it up a little bit, it says, since music ensembles and lessons have auditions after registration, should they register for those classes even if we might not be accepted after auditioning?
Yeah, so I think I heard this year that the auditions are now going to be done. You have to send a tape. I'm not sure about that, but yes, you would enroll in your 4 credit classes. You want to make sure you're in a full course load, which is at least either 4 or 4.5 credits, and then if you audition for music lessons and you get them, then you'll get a permission number to add that class. And those are either quarter credit or half credit classes. So it won't be a problem, to enroll in it. Even if you're in 4.5 credits, because you're in focus, say, and then you get accepted into music lessons that are, if they're half credit, you just email your dean, say, I'm your dean. You say, hey, Dean Rabiner, I'm in focus, but I just was accepted, for cello lessons, which is a half credit. Can you increase my credit limit to 5 so I can enroll in these cello lessons course? And the dean will do that for you every time.
Got it. Okay, perfect, David. We got a good one here. Can you give an example of a half credit class? I know like PE classes, you just said music classes. Can you give some more examples of some potential half credit classes?
Yeah, so PE, music, a lot of the dance performance classes are half credit. And then a really interesting example to look at, because there's really kind of neat series of courses that are called house courses. You can find them on Duke Hub like anything else. House course, they usually have about 20, 25 a semester. Those are half credit SU, satisfactory, unsatisfactory grading basis classes that are student led. And so it's the students that come up with the topics that they want to teach. They find the faculty to sort of oversee or supervise it, but they're on a really interesting array of different topics that at least one student at Duke who's teaching the classes is super interested in, and those are really interesting half credit classes to look at. Marching band, band, if it was happening, I don't know if it is because there's not going to be fans at the football games. You could enroll in band as a half credit class.
Got it. We have a focus question here, David. It says, are we able to switch your focus classes, especially the first year seminar and focus, or is the seminar specific to the cluster that we are in?
Yeah, so, in any focus cluster, there'll be like, say, three to five classes. You pick two. You don't always get your your top two choices. But if you, let's say, you're already enrolled in two focus classes and you decide you'd like to be in a different focus class within that cluster, you have to email the focus program and say, gee, I would like to switch out of class A and go into class B. But those switches can only be made within the same focus cluster. You can't say, hey, I'd really like to take this class that's in a different cluster. That would not be possible.
All right. Just type in a quick response to these. So the next one that we have here, David, is when students whose course registration window is on the 12th rather than the 11th have less of a chance of getting classes they want because they're enrolling the students on the 11th are taking up spots?
Yes, they will. They will have less of a chance of getting into classes, right? Because another, 650 students or so will have registered before you. And so that will happen. It's unavoidable. It's frustrating. What I would say is there should be dozens of classes that you would be really excited to take because they're really great, interesting classes. And the way things work at Duke is if your second window this time, when it comes time to register for the spring, you'll be in the first window. That rotates back and forth. So everybody over their time at Duke is in the first window half the time and the second window half the time. And when you're seniors, all the seniors actually register on the same day. So if you're disadvantaged this time, you'll be advantaged the next go round.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, David. So we have a really good question just about general courses. It says, what's the difference between multiple sections of the same course? For example, if they're in Chinese 131 has 001 lecture or 002 lecture or different discussion sections. So you just explain the course numbering for students?
Yeah, so, if you're looking at a course with the same number and then there's like an 001, 002, it's the exact same course. Typically, in most cases, it's taught by different instructors, but it should be covering the same material. In some cases, like, for chemistry, there's a chemistry 201, which is organic 001, and a chemistry 201, 002. In that case, it's the same instructor, but one of those sections is only for first-year students. You have to be an incoming student to take one of those sections. So, so for lectures where there are different section numbers, but it's the same class, like Math 111-01, Math 111-02, Math 111-03, it's the exact same class. You should be covering this pretty much the same material. Oftentimes, there are just going to be different instructors who are teaching it. And if you're talking about like a big lecture class like Psych 101 that might have 35 discussion sections that are associated with it, again, the discussion section should be covering pretty much the same material. They'll just be different different people who are instructing those sections, but the class itself should be largely identical.
All right. So while book bagging, a couple of classes that this particular person selected said they would automatically be enrolled in that same class, but at a different type and a different method of teaching. Then when this person looked back at the book bag, both the class that they had originally selected and the class they said it would be automatically enrolled in were listed. What does this mean?
So that I don't know. Ask that student to email me directly. My email address is D as in David Rabiner, RABINER @duke.edu, and I can go look in their book bag and try to figure out what's going on. But from that alone, I don't know what the issue may be.
Okay. Yep. I wrote down the person's name and I'll send you a message after this, David, to help with that.
Okay.
So thank you for helping with that, David. This is a foreign language question. It's our first one of these. So can they replace themselves in a certain foreign language course if we do not have a Duke AP credit? This particular person took 4 years of a language in high school, but the school's curriculum maybe needed a little bit of work. So they would rather be in a lower level class if they got to decide.
Yeah, so, all the language programs will, have generally a pretty detailed set of placement guidelines, that you should look at. From those guidelines, you should really have a pretty good idea of what the appropriate level is for you. If it's not clear after consulting the guidelines, say whether you should start at 102 or 203 or a 300 level, you can reach out to the program director for that language. Typically their contact info is right on the same page as the placement guidelines, and say, hey, I'm a new student. Here's the background I have in Spanish. I'm not sure whether I should enroll in 203 or 204. Can you help me, give me some ideas to help me figure that out? And that's the best you can do. You really want to be careful in the languages about underplacing yourself. I mean, if you have 3 years, say, of Spanish and you put yourself in Spanish 101, there's a very good chance you'll get kicked out of the class in the first week. What the language instructors try to do in the first week is really assess whether students have placed themselves appropriately. And they do have the right, if they think a student has placed themselves inappropriately, to have that student leave that class and try to get into the level that's appropriate for them. So if you're not sure, reach out to the director of the Spanish language program, explain your situation, and get their input.
All right. Next question, David. What's the difference between Bio 201 and 201L? They're listed separately and have different enrollment caps. So do you want to explain the difference between the courses and the labs?
Yes, so let's look at that. So Bio this year 201. I'm having to go on to Duke Hub and look at that. So 201. So 201L. That is 201L-001. That is the lecture section of Bio 201. Bio 201 has a required laboratory. So there's 201L-001. That's just the big lecture that's capped at 204 students. And then everything else associated with Bio 201 is a lab, and those labs are I think both in person and online this year. Although I think I gave the wrong. I think I misunderstood the question. So there's a 201. There's a 201. Okay, so there's a 201.01 lecture version of biology 201. That is the synchronous online version. So that would be for students who might be in different time zones. And so they really need the asynchronous version of the class. And then there's a 201L-001 that is also an online class, but it looks like days and times to be announced. I'm gonna have to get back. Jordan, I'm gonna have to email you the answer to that.
Okay.
That is actually not clear to me because they're both listed. Both of those are listed as asynchronous online. So I'm not sure of that, and I'll have to email you, Jordan.
Got you. Okay. We got another question here, Dave. When will we be assigned our academic deans?
Yeah, so that should happen any day now. Typically, the deans are put in at the same time that the advisors are. The advisors were put in the system, I believe, on Saturday. So you should all see who your college advisor is. Deans are not in there yet, and they should be in within the next several days.
All right. Got another question here. Let me find this one. Are any seats saved during registration for incoming first-year students who are registering in the second block?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to be
That,
sure.
that's why, second, if you're in the second block, that is a disadvantage. There's no doubt. It particularly happens like with first year seminars, writing 101 classes. But again, there'll always be good options for you. And if you're the second window this time, you'll be the first window next time.
David, this is probably a question that other students have, so I think it's worth asking. Are there specific courses that pre-med students have to take their first semester?
No.
Okay.
No, you don't even have to start on your pre-med requirements in your first semester if you don't want to. I mean, there are students who don't decide they want to be pre-med until their second year or third year.
Mhm.
What is most common for pre-med students to start with, and it depends on the AP credits and all that you have, but typically pre-med students will start with wherever they're at in the chemistry sequence. So they would typically start with, Chem 101, or if they have AP credit, Chem 110, or perhaps even Chem 201 if they had a 5 on the AP. We absolutely do not recommend that students take one of the a chemistry class and a biology lab class in their first semester. So taking Chem along with Bio 201 or 202 would not typically be a good idea. You can do it and it may work out fine, but taking 2 lab classes in your very first semester is kind of a high risk way to begin. Sometimes students will take math along with a chem class if they're pre-health, but if you don't, just to be clear, you don't need to take a single math course at Duke to graduate if you don't want to. Math is not required. Sometimes students take math because they've taken it every year they've been in school and just kind of assume they have to keep doing it. You don't. And then also, if you have AP credit for math, either for Math 21 or Math 22, as far as the math you need for medical school, that's probably it. There's a real good chance you won't need any additional math for med school if you have AP credit for math. That's not 100% true, but it's pretty close. So I would say Chem would be the most reasonable pre-health class to start with in the fall.
All right. How do classes like Education 101, how will classes like Education 101 happen this semester? I mean, I think that's going to be broad, right? Depending on the instructor. I guess the person's asking, will that one be online or will it be a hybrid course? Would you know anything about that, David, or is it posted as students are looking to book that?
So, I'd have to go into Duke Hub. Education 101 this year is, so there are 2 sections of it. Actually, there are actually 4 sections of it, and there are both online and in-person versions of that class. So you can, if you want to take that class in person, you're able to do that. And then there's also an asynchronous online version of that class, which means the material is recorded. You can watch it whenever you want. There's also a synchronous online version of that class, which means you have to be prepared to take it online at the time that it's being offered. And then there are 2 in-person versions of that class. And that's a great class, and they're all great instructors. So you can't go wrong with any of those.
All right, so somebody said they're interested in taking Statistics 101, but a placement exam is required. When and how would they take the placement exam?
So that would be news to me if there's a placement exam for that. Let me just say that the stats department strongly recommends that the first statistics class that students take be Stat 199, not Stat 101. And there is no placement exam. It just says for that course, see department website for placement info, not open to students. Yeah, if you've taken another 100 level stats class, you can't take that. I do not believe that there's any kind of placement exam for that. And there's certainly not a placement exam for 199. 190, take a look at 199. They reserve a bunch of seats in 199 for first year students. I would also say if you're interested in statistics, go to their website. They have a great short little video from the DUS, the director of the major, specifically about the first year stats courses and what they recommend for students as far as getting started.
Gotcha. Says, can we take more than one seminar in the fall semester?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you're in focus, you're already taking 2. There is no limit on the number of seminar classes you can take. You know, sometimes because there's a requirement in the first year that you have to take a seminar, sometimes students, for some reason, think, well, I shouldn't take more than one. You can take as many as you want. You know, the only thing, not that it's a reason not to do it, but one of the curriculum requirements in Trinity is 2 small group learning experience classes after the first year. Small group learning experience classes are things like seminars, independent studies, things like that. So you could take 8 seminars in your first year, and you might love every single one of them, and that could be great, but it will not satisfy that small group learning experience requirement. You need to take 2 additional after the first year. But if you see 2 seminar classes that you really want to take, don't feel like, nope, I can only do one. You can have, all seminars are small classes that are more discussion based, student participation based, student presentation, and it's a great way to get to know your fellow students and instructors. I wouldn't want to take all seminars. It's good to experience different types of classes. So a large lecture class, we encourage students to get balance in the types of classes between small and large classes, and the kinds of materials. So just like you wouldn't want to take 4 natural science classes or 4 humanities or all social sciences. It's good to break up your classes among the different divisions to bring a little bit more variability into the kind of work that you're doing.
Great. Okay. Thank you all so much. We've answered nearly 80 questions and we still have 80 more. We've done that in 45 minutes. So that's been pretty impressive. So we're going to try to get through as many of these as we can. Thank you, Nicole, for responding in the chat. And thank you, David, for being with us tonight. So this person says, I saw that some Writing 101 classes have 6 seats reserved for Pratt students. What does this mean for the remaining seats?
Well, yeah, that means that there are only 6 seats for Trinity students, because Writing 101 classes are capped at 12. They never, ever, ever go above 12 students. I shouldn't say never, ever, ever. I've seen that once in about 10 years where they let in a 13th student to one class. So I'm not actually, I don't know why that was done this year. I haven't seen that before, but there are some Writing 101s where they have half the seats reserved for the Pratt students. So that means 6 students left in that section for Trinity.
All right. So it says, when will the classes that have TBA as their class structure have their class structure formally announced during book bagging? Is that going to happen?
So the class structure, what I see is room TBA, which means there's a room to be assigned. But in terms of the instruction mode, whether it's online, in person, or both on campus, online, which is hybrid, that should all be assigned already. If you're seeing something where the instruction mode is not evident, Jordan, if you could have that student email the class to me, I'll have to check with the registrar, because that may just be an error.
Okay. All right, yep. And we'll put David's email. Maybe we should put the Academic Advising Center.
Yeah, put the advising at Duke.edu. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah, I know, man. Yeah, that's hilarious. You're one of my favorite people here, so I appreciate your flexibility. I've heard that some classes which are lecture-based and team-based. What does that mean exactly, and how can we tell which is which when we are book bagging or look to enroll?
Yeah. So, you know, the only class that I'm actually aware of, and there may be others, that has both a lecture-based version and a team-based version is Neuroscience 101 and Neuroscience 102. 101, those are both the biological bases of behavior. They cover the same material. 101 is the lecture version of that, and you know, that will have about 150 students in it. Oh, it looks like they changed the way they're. No, yeah. So neuroscience. Okay, Neuroscience 101-001 is the smaller one, which is capped at 60, is the team-based version of that class, and essentially, you know, those two classes are covering the same material. The larger one is doing it in a traditional, you know, lecture format. Now, of course, it will be an online lecture, and they have discussion sections. The smaller version, which used to be 102, but now in this new renumbering, they have a 101-001 and a 101-002. That smaller one is a team-based version where instead of, you know, a faculty member up there kind of lecturing, things are done in small groups. It's much more kind of small group team-based learning where, you know, if it were in person, the instructor and TAs would be walking around to the groups as they're going over things. They're both great classes. I know both instructors. They're fabulous. They satisfy the exact same prerequisite for the neuroscience major. Typically, the large lecture version is oftentimes filled before the first year class even has a chance to enroll. So back when the students enrolled last spring, before everything got, you know, kind of thrown upside down, the lecture-based version was already full with 30 people on the wait list, whereas the smaller team-based version has seats. If you want, for students who want to begin exploring their interest in neuroscience, the team-based version is both are great options. And if the team-based version is the only one that has seats left, I would say it would be a great option for you.
Okay. Let me just get this out. Okay, good. Thank you, David. So the next question is, what is the purpose of a laboratory class in a math course? Kind of, you just talk about the philosophy of that, a laboratory class in a math course?
Not exactly. You know, I should more or less pass on that. I do not. I think what they do in the labs is more kind of the lecture part is going to be, you know, the regular class meetings are going to be the kind of the professor, you know, kind of teaching and explaining. The lab is going to be where, you know, actively working problems and going over problems. That is my understanding of it.
Got you.
So actually working this stuff instead of getting exposed to the theory, which would come more in the lecture part.
Got it. Hey, David, where in Duke Hub can students find their advisor?
So that would be, I don't have access to the student version of Duke Hub. If you look in the registration section of the Blue Book, you should see it there. If you can't find it, or something like, so none of the advisors see your view. What we see is completely different. But if any sort of technical question about where do I find something on Duke Hub, or how do I enroll in this, whatever, email the registrar, just registrar@duke.edu, and say, hey, I can't see where my advisor's listed in Duke Hub. Where do I see that? They will get back to you pretty quickly and tell you the exact, the exact page, part of Duke Hub where you'll see that.
Okay.
And if that student wants to email me, I can look up who their advisor is through my own access, but I can't see what they see.
David has super access. And just for everybody, I put the email addresses to the registrar and to advising@duke.edu into the group chat. So everybody can see that in the chat function. It says online, it says if a class online says when book bagging, it is a hybrid or fully online, how would you know the difference? Between the two?
So when you click on the link, the course number, which is a link, it'll pull up a box that'll say, class details. In that box will be the instruction mode. If the class is a hybrid class, what you'll see for instruction mode is both in person and online. If it's just online, that's all it will say, will be online. And if it's an online class that has a specific meeting time, so a synchronous online class, the meeting time will be evident in Duke Hub. If it's an asynchronous online class, which means there is no meeting time, it will say asynchronous online for the in the instruction mode.
Thank you.
You'll need to click on the class, on the class number, which is a link, to open up that course detail box to look in the instruction mode in that instruction mode line to see exactly how it's listed.
David, is it common for 100 level courses to fill up prior to the freshman registration date or first year registration date? Okay.
Typically, no. Typically, so Econ 101, Psych 101, the big ones, Econ, Psych, Chem 101, Advanced, Colant, rarely, you should not have any trouble getting into those classes.
Got it. All right, so this next one here. Why doesn't book bagging allow me to enroll in 2 online courses with a 30-minute gap in between?
It will let you, so that's a little deceptive. Well, not deceptive, but a little confusing. What happens is if there are classes where the actual time of the class actually overlaps, Duke Hub will not let you in. What it also does is if you have classes that are meeting in back-to-back time slots, so there may only be 20 minutes between the class, it'll indicate that with a warning. It's just alerting you, hey, these classes meet back-to-back. In the good old days when we were actually on campus, if one of those classes was on East and the other one, that met 20 minutes later was like in the Levine Science Research Center on the far part of West, you could not make it there on time. It would be pointless to try. But now, particularly if they're online, it doesn't matter, obviously, if they're back to back. So when it actually came time to enroll in those classes, as long as there's not an actual time overlap, you don't have to worry about that warning message. It's just a warning to let you know, hey, these meet in back-to-back time slots. Are you sure you'll be able to get there?
Okay. Let me get to my next one here. It's a good one here. I was trying to make
Just one question I see here that's a perplexing one. It says on the parent Facebook page, someone said that freshmen were allowed to overload this year. Is this true, or is it just a rumor? That is just a rumor. There is no truth to that. You are all limited to 4.5 credits. With permission from your dean, you can go to 5 credits, but that would be 4 full credit classes and 2 half credit classes. You cannot be in 5 full credit classes. Whoever said freshmen can overload, unless that's changed tomorrow. As of today, that is just a rumor. And with all the things that have been changed, I will be dumbfounded if that changes. That will not happen.
Got it. All right, David, it says, how will hybrid classes work? Approximately how frequently will hybrid classes meet in person?
That should be evident. That will vary, and that should be evident on the on Duke Hub.
Okay. It says Psychology 101 lecture times are still TBA. When will those be released so we can see if it fits in their schedule?
The lecture time is TBA. Let me look at that. I would be surprised if that's correct, but you never know. Psych 101, by the way, is a fabulous class. I would say almost every student I have talked to over the last 3 years who's taken that class has absolutely loved it. Psych 101. It's an online class. Yeah, TBA. That's it. I don't know why that's not up. I'm gonna have to email the registrar and find out about that. I do not know the answer.
Okay. Great. Y'all are asking us questions. We're doing some research on. That's great. And we'll post answers to these questions on our Facebook page. So we have just a couple of minutes left, and we still have about 50 questions. So we'll do our best to get through some of these here, the ones that are pretty broad. How can we learn more about classes besides the description within the book bagging piece? Is the course catalog or the registrar's page not been working for this particular person for at least a month? So how can we learn more about particular courses?
Yeah, that's a great question. The reality is that you're not going to learn all that much from what's posted in the online catalog, on Duke Hub. The most detailed, you have like a 1-paragraph description, and that it gives you a general idea of what the course is going to cover, but it doesn't really give you a clear sense of what the course will actually be like for you. The most detailed information about a course that's available will be in the course synopsis. And when you click on the course number, which is a link, and it opens up the class detail page, up at the top of that box, you should see a link, to the course synopsis. And oftentimes that's where instructors will put in, more detailed information. But, honestly, sometimes there is no synopsis that's even listed. The other thing you can do is, we have a great group of peer advisors at the Advising Center. If you go to the Advising Center website and look up the peer advisors, those are students who are trained by our office to provide advising from a student-centered perspective. They may have taken the class or have friends who've taken the class. They may be able to give you, more details. But really, it's hard to really have a feel for what the class will be like until you sit in on it, whether that's in the classroom or this year online. Get the syllabus, see exactly what you're going to cover, what you're going to learn, what the assignments are, when the tests are given, if they have tests, all that stuff. It's truly hard to learn from the information online, what a class will actually be like. DSG had a project, I don't know the status of it now, where they were trying to compile like a repository of course syllabi, for courses that were recently taught. You could see if you could find that to see what a recent syllabus looked like, but it's pretty hard to tell, honestly, from the information online what a class is going to be like, what it's going to feel like. You really want to have a good sense of that until until you've sat through a class or two.
Got it. Okay, so it's 9:01. We still got about 50 questions left. So what I would love to do, maybe, David, is maybe take 1 or 2 more, and then we'll do our best. We get a record of these, and we'll try to get them answered. But thank you all for hanging on. We still have 154 participants, which is tremendous. But David, I want to get just to a couple of broad ones here that I think might be beneficial for everyone.
Okay.
And then we'll see if we can kind of take it from there. So let me see here. What are the places you can go to get an overview of specific courses? We kind of just talked about that, but is there an online place? Where can we go get an overview of specific courses?
Not that I know of, honestly. I mean, you can read what's online. You should always check for the course synopsis. That if there is more detailed information, that's where the faculty are supposed to put it. You can reach out to the peer advisors, see if what they know about the class, or if they can put you in touch with a student, who's taken it recently. But until you get the syllabus and sit in a time or two, it's just really hard. It's just really honestly hard to tell. I mean, in a typical, if everything was, pre-COVID, I mean, the drop add period, students do a lot of shopping, right? Students might sit in on, 6, 7 classes to decide which 4 they want to take, right? Because they realize that, the best way to get a feel for what this class is really like is to sit in on it, see what the professor's like, see what the atmosphere in the class is like, try to get a copy of the syllabus, see what we're actually covering, what the material is, how I'm going to be evaluated. But what's available online does not provide you with that kind of information. So I check out I reach out to the peer advisors and see if they can either tell you more or put you in touch with a friend of theirs who may have taken the class.
Okay, David, this will be our last one because it's about area of knowledge. So it says, do any 101 courses fulfill the areas of knowledge requirements? I know AP credits do not substitute, but there are non-AP courses that are 101s.
Yeah, the only one, almost every single class at Duke should have an area of knowledge code. The only 101 class that doesn't are Writing 101. Those don't have any area of knowledge codes, but any other, Econ 101, the area of knowledge is social science. Psych 101 carries both natural science and social science. Every course at Duke, with a few small exceptions, and oftentimes that's because the faculty forgot to request the code, should at least have an area of knowledge codes attached to it, whether it's 101, 356, it doesn't matter. They all should have an area of knowledge codes. And if you click on the course link to bring up that class detail box, in the course attributes section, that's where you'll see all of the curriculum codes that particular course carries. And if it has more than one area of knowledge, you only get one. And initially the system just puts it in one place or the other because you need it in both places. It just sticks it somewhere. And then if it turns out later on you don't need it there, but you need it somewhere else, it will move it. And then classes can have up to 3 mode of inquiry codes, and you get all of them. That's why it's so easy to, honestly, to fulfill the curriculum requirements. As long as you're taking some diverse mix of classes and not doing all social science, all natural science, by the time you declare your major, you'll be pretty close to done, or perhaps even done with the curriculum requirements. It looks like a lot, and I know that students oftentimes feel concerned about it, but it almost never, ever, ever turns out really to be a challenge for students to fulfill those.
All right, so we're gonna try to get a couple of these more typed in, but we just wanna say thank you to David for joining us this evening on short notice. Thank you to all 200 plus of you for joining. Nicole, thank you for rocking the devil's horns and answering questions in the chat the entire time. We have recorded this and we will post this online in the next couple of days. We have to get it transcribed first to make sure that we are meeting our accessibility requirements. And then we will, find other times. I know the Academic Advising Center is open for office hours.
Yeah, just so you all know, you can email questions to us, to advising@duke.edu. We're taking calls from incoming students between 9 and 4:30 every day. Just call our main number, which you can find on our site, and you'll be put through to speak with an advisor almost right away, unless the phones are really pounding, and then you may have to wait a while for someone to call you back. You should be hearing from your college advisor, within the next few days to a week about scheduling a time to meet. You can find out who your advisor is on DoCoP, and you can reach out and introduce yourself about scheduling a time. You don't have to meet right away. You just want to make sure that you get something scheduled for before your registration window so they can review your courses with you and, of course, begin getting to know you. And our office, again, is always available to speak with you as well.
All right. Listen, thank you, everyone. Nicole, do you have anything else to add? Nope.
No, thank you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care and have a great evening. We're going to sign off. Everybody be safe. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye, Jordan. Bye, Nicole.
Bye-bye.
Bye.